Now, what do you attribute the success of the so-called Teal candidates to, and were you expecting the results that occurred?
Well, I think you need to remember these are community independents. So these are community movements that have said enough is enough when it comes to traditional politics and the major parties, and in particular the Liberal Party, these are traditionally non-Labor seats. Communities want to be heard on the big issues. They've had enough of the wedge politics and the games around climate policy, around integrity, and so they got behind candidates that promise action on those issues that reflect their values. And I think that was a really strong, loud, clear message across the country in so many seats.
Now, how does this movement work? Because you say you're all individual candidates, but when it came to the ICAC bill, for example, you worked with Helen Haines. At times you appear to work as a political party. How often do the independents speak? Do you caucus on issues?
No, absolutely not. But we are sensible professionals. We know how to network. We know how to work collaboratively together. That's the past crossbench, and I certainly hope the new crossbench will be similar in nature. That is how the real world works. It doesn't have to be a party. It's the best of both worlds. We will, certainly speaking for myself, I vote for my community, I vote for Warringah, but I work collaboratively across the parliament, and I worked with the coalition, I worked with Labor and other crossbenchers for outcomes that my community wants to see.
But Zali Steggall, I guess it's a bit hard to not think of you as a political party in the sense that you call yourselves Teal candidates, or you called that. The same guy had a fundraising vehicle that donated to you in Simon Holmes Court, and he donated himself, and you all ran on the same policy. Can you see from that how it's hard not to define you as one movement, if you like? If you don't like to call it a political party, you all stand for the same thing. Your voters were all voting for the same thing.
But this is what I think this is what the traditional media is grappling with. It is just unwilling to let go of the old school status quo that it can only be a binary choice of two political sort of sides. What communities are saying loud and clear, that doesn't suit their purposes anymore. They want a real voice, a real representation. Now, the fact that many independents have ran on similar platforms, I would ask you, Andrew, is it really surprising? Are we saying that climate policy and integrity and anti-corruption commission, respect for women, these are not niche issues. These are issues that over 80% of the population want to see good policy on. So I would, with respect, say that does not make a political party. It simply makes sensible, ethical and good candidates prepared to listen to their communities and be a voice for those issues.
Have you spoken or messaged with Anthony Albanese as yet?
Yes, I've spoken to the Prime Minister, in particular before his trip, obviously to congratulate him. I think, there is a clear mandate and there's a clear reset in Australian politics, and I welcome his approach to date in wanting to be more collaborative and more proactive on key issues that I know my community cares a lot about.
So what did he have to say to you? Was climate change and ICAC discussed?
Look, I won't go into the specifics of conversations with the Prime Minister. I would imagine he won't have too many more with me. But obviously, it is about developing a strong working relationship. I am very open to do that, as I worked with the government in the previous Parliament. But what I am really clear about, I want to see the most ambitious possible climate policy, because we have a challenge ahead, but we also have great opportunity, and we must embrace it. That is something my community absolutely wants. And we want fiscal discipline and anti-corruption. We simply cannot continue rorting our way through the public purse.
All right. Do you see similar so-called Teal candidates running at the New South Wales and Victorian state elections?
Again, that will be for the communities to determine. As you would have seen during the election, I had over 1,400 volunteers, and I know many of the other independents had similar numbers of volunteers, anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000. So what that says is a very engaged community. That says people on the ground wearing the T-shirt, talking to their friends and family, prepared to spend their spare time for those issues. So if communities do not feel represented at state level, I imagine they will engage and look for alternatives. So the message is clear to all the traditional politicians, the career politicians. It's not going to be good enough anymore. Communities are going to want better. They are going to want real representation.
Would independents like you countenance running in Labor seats next time?
Look, again, it's not about me. I think this is a misconception you are sort of intent.
Well, I said independents like you. I said independents like you.
Well, sure, but again, it's up to those communities. If communities in traditional Labor seats do not feel represented by their representative, I imagine they will, and they have those options. You saw, for example, Daly succeed in a traditionally Labor seat. Again, communities speak very clearly if they don't feel represented.
Look, you and your independent colleagues have been called, these are not my words, I stress, rich, entitled, rich enough to worry about climate change rather than power bills, and the sort who would fly in planes and have gas-guzzling cars as you lecture on climate change. How do you react to that?
Oh, Andrea, you're really dragging the bucket of the trolls on social media with all that. Look, the reality is concern about climate policy is a common thread, right? 70% of Australia are worried about it. And actually, it is the lower socioeconomic populations that will be most impacted by climate change. We've seen whole communities devastated by bushfires and floods in the last parliament. And communities up in Lismore are still not rebuilt, right? They know the challenge they face. So to put this issue of climate concern as being some, wealthy sort of concern is so wrong, and it just speaks to the disrespect and the disregard, I would argue, the Conservative side has taken for too long in trying to disregard this issue. This is an issue that is not left or right. It is not a socio-economic issue. It is something that will be existential for everyone. It is an opportunity for our fiscal and our prosperous future, but it is also a major issue of risk and safety. So we just have to tackle it. It just is nonsensical to continue to try and pigeonhole it as a wealth issue.
OK, we're nearly out of time. Just a couple of quick ones. How often would you speak to Simon Holmes à Court?
Oh, I think I've spoken to him maybe once in about 6 months. So
there you go. All right, and people have made comparisons between you and the Greens. How do you think you differ from the Greens? Or how do you think the independence movement differs from the Greens?
Well, look, I think the Greens are probably the environmental answer in traditional ALP seats, which was not really something that was, there was no appetite for that, I think, in traditionally fiscally conservative seats. And I think that's why community independents with a strong message around climate have had the support of the communities. I don't agree with all of the Greens' policies. I think I probably have a more business focus. I believe we need a more sensible transition. I do want 60% emissions reduction by 2030. I don't think it's feasible that we can get to 75%. So I would argue I have a slightly different approach, but I am absolutely keen that we put in place the levers to ensure we maximise our potential.
Zali Steggall, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.